The murder rate of farmers in South Africa is 13 per 100,000 of the population. As long as you have political parties who have slogans like kill the boer, kill the farmer, who have slogans like one settler, one bullet, when your president has a song that says give me my machine gun, against whom does he want to use his machine gun?
What makes you think that this whole thing started with the farm attacks? What introduced it?
I think it was an intimidation tactics.
To scare off the whites?
Yeah. Black people cannot be racist because they are black.
They can't be racist because they are black?
Correct.
Henk van der Graaf är ordförande för Transvaal Agricultural Union, en organisation som företräder kommersiella farmare i Sydafrika och som vänder sig emot regeringspartiet ANC:s utstakade politiska väg, som man anser leder till socialism och orättvisor. Van der Graaf berättar att yrket som lantbrukare i Sydafrika är det farligaste i världen. Farmarmorden är något som van der Graaf har hållit tal om i Genève inför Förenta Nationernas kommission för mänskliga rättigheter bland minoriteter.
My name is Henk van der Graaf. I am at the moment a farmer in South Africa in the province of Lumpopo, nearby the small town of Bella Bella, that in the future we called warm baths, due to the hot water that's boiling out of the from underneath the soil here. I'm also the chairman of the Agricultural Union in this province, TLUSA, formerly known as the Transvaal Agricultural Union. But as we are not anymore just limited to the old borders of the Transvaal province, we are now countrywide, so that's why we are now TLU South Africa. And then I'm also on a lower scale, busy with some cultural activities that mainly are to the benefit of our Afrikaner people.
Are you engaged in any political party in any way?
At the moment, not really, but yes, I am still a member of the, I think at the moment the oldest political party in South Africa, called the Herstigte Nasionale Party, the HNP. At the moment, the HNP does not partake in elections because we said that the handing over of this country from Mr. F.W. de Klerk to the ANC government was actually illegal, and therefore the elections thereafter are not of any significance to the Afrikaner people. You know, we are now in a one-man, one-vote system in South Africa, where the Afrikaner people, who are more or less 4 million, have to sort of compete against the registered people that are more or less 60 million. So what is the chance in this political dispensation to get any gain for Afrikaner people? We recognize that the Freedom Front are doing good work for the Afrikaner people, although they are at the moment focusing on minority groups. And
but the Boer population is supposed to be a minority group in South Africa.
Yes, but unfortunately it's not recognized like that. But you are totally right with that one. The Afrikaner is a minority group. The Khoisan, the former colored people, they are a minority group. The Venda people, which is the tribe of our president at the moment, is a minority group. The Sotho people is a minority group. The Zulu people is a minority group. The Xhosa people is a minority group. There is no majority in South Africa. Um, we are all groups of minorities in the country. But the political parties don't recognize um, the existence of people, of minority groups. We have a constitution that stipulates that we have to be a rainbow nation. But in this rainbow nation, unfortunately, the only color that comes to light is black.
And you said that the handing over of power to the current ANC ruling party was illegal. What did you mean by that?
Sure. We had in 1992 a referendum because on the then constituency of South Africa, which was it's a long story. We had a three-chamber parliament consisting of white people and consisting of coloureds and Indians. And then there were the black people that were in the homelands. So the Transkei people had their homeland, Bophuthatswana had their homeland, Venda had their homeland, and they all had democratic rights in their own countries.
A sort of self-independence.
Sure. And that was the old policy of the National Party of Dr. Hendrik Verwoerd from that time. He said, let's educate those people and give them the opportunity to govern their own countries. And then later on, the policy of separate development was abandoned. Some countries, some people were, I think, not in good faith. They called it apartheid, what was not actually any form of hate. It was separate development for each country, for each population, and that was then abandoned. Then in 1992, we had a referendum when Mr. de Klerk, the former president, got into negotiations with Mr. Nelson Mandela. And then there was a referendum under the white people then. Should the negotiations with the ANC go on about a new dispensation? But Mr. de Klerk promised the population, who were then the legitimate electorate of the country, that the final decision will be put before them in either a referendum or an election. And then the majority of the people said, yes, go ahead with the negotiations, but they were under the impression that the government would come back and said, all right, this is what the negotiations delivered us, and now you must make a final decisions, go on yes or no. And that promise of Mr. de Klerk never happened. So that's why we say the handing over of the government to the ANC was not legal, because Mr. de Klerk promised us that we would have the final say, and he did not do that. And from there on, the ANC took over. There was a interim constitution of 1993. The new government took over on that interim constitution, and then there was a new constitution in 1996, and that constitution we now still have. Some people say it's the best constitution in the world, but 25 to 30 years later, we believe we experienced that this constitution is not the best constitution that you can have. And now we as the Afrikaner people, especially, but the broader white community, is experiencing big problems at the moment. We have farm murders in South Africa. On the cultural side, our schools are taken away from us. They try their best to take our language from us. We are, I think, the only country in the world that has a policy of 11 official languages. But in fact, the only language is English.
Okay.
So yeah, we have, and then there's some other problems that we experience on the farming community. The farmers in South Africa, traditional, are Afrikaner people, and they do a good job. They kept the economy going, even through this lockdown period. The agricultural contribution to the economy was more than any other.
Any other country?
Any other in the country, any other, more than mining, more than business, everything was closed. But farming had to go on because people have to eat.
Statistics is saying that being a farmer in South Africa is one of the most dangerous, if not the most dangerous job you can have in the world.
Correct.
Can you tell us a little about this?
If you look at the statistics on farm murders in South Africa, the murder rate in the world is more or less 5 people per 100,000 of the population. The murder rate of policemen in South Africa, that's quite disturbing, is about 8.8 to 9 persons per 100,000 of the population. The murder rate of farmers in South Africa is 13.
So it's almost the double.
Per 100,000 of the population. That's why we say yes. Farming in South Africa is perhaps the most dangerous job you can have anywhere in the world.
And why do you think that the farmers, out of all categories of workers, are being attacked in such a high extent?
It's very difficult to establish that. You can only guess about it because there's never ever launched a formal investigation into that.
Never.
No, we are pleading with the police service to investigate what is the reason behind farm murders. You know.
And what is the response when you ask the police for these types of investigations?
No response.
They don't care?
No response. Yes, I think they don't care. Because let me give you some examples of what is going on during a farm attack, a farm murder. Sometimes it happens on a Sunday morning, and the farmers most of them are Christians. They go to church on a Sunday morning. While they are in church, those attackers come to the house. They have a pickup that you see all over in South Africa, but that we call a bakkie. They go to the house, they put everything on the pickup that they want to have, and then they wait for the farmer and his family to come home. They are just sitting there, perhaps drinking some of the whiskey or the beer that's in the house. And then they are waiting for the people to come back from church. But then they are waiting for the people. Why? When the people come in, they burn them with hot water, boiling water, or with irons. They rape the women and the daughters.
But this sounds like torture. I mean, pouring boiling water over someone.
Sure. So this is not actually just a farm attack. And then during that period, after they tortured them and they raped the mother and daughters in front of the father, they just kill them in cold blood. And that is what's happening.
And how common is this?
Unfortunately, very common. Far too common. The farmer tax has, in most of cases, nothing to do with the problem between the farmers and the farm workers. Because in South Africa, because of the wide area that we live in, some farms are 4 to 15,000 hectares wide. So it's not a question that you are amongst other peoples. You are on your own. And the farm workers on most of the farms come there from some time before. Father worked for my grandfather, and the son worked for my father, and now I work with the sons. So there's a very good relation on the general between the farmers and the farm workers, because they are somewhere around nothing, and so they have to rely on each other. The farm workers have to rely on the farmers because they give them food and money and everything, and the farmers have to rely on the workers because they help them with the work on. You can imagine for yourself a 10,000 hectares farm. It's quite nice. I don't think you have 10,000 hectares farms in Sweden. So that gives you an indication about what it is. But what we, as an agricultural union, in our investigations that we found is that farmer tax are not done by the farmers and the workers or the workers on the farms themselves. Most of the time, it is planned very, very well with military precision. You will find that when some of the guys will be arrested, you will find they come from Soweto and they go to Soutpansberg, to the northern border against the border nearby Zimbabwe. And there's a hit squad coming in there. They do the farm attack, they do the murder, and they go back that side. So there's no actually reason for that, and that's why we think there's some political motive behind it.
And this sounds like you're talking now about military precision.
Yeah.
And you're talking about hits. Somebody coming in, doing an operation, killing and torture farmers,
Correct.
And then leaving.
Yeah.
What makes you believe that this is organized in some way by? Yeah, who could have benefited?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. By whom is it organized? Very difficult to say. But as long as you have political parties who have slogans like "kill the boer, kill the farmer," who have slogans like "one settler, one bullet," when your president has a song that says "give me my machine gun," against whom does he want to use his machine gun? And the climate is created against the farmer, against the boer in this country. Those people say, and that comes from our government as well, from the ANC government, that the farmers stole the land.
Is that true? Did you steal the land?
No, not at all. We bought the land. In history, and we can talk hours about this. When the white people, the voortrekkers, came into the country there were no people there. There were wars between the different black tribes. When they got to Natal, where the Zulus live, they went to the leader of the Zulus, Dingaan, and they asked him can we get some land? He said, yes, you must just bring my cattle back that another tribe has stolen. They brought it back, and when the treaty was signed about getting land for the voortrekkers, for the Afrikaner, for the white people that time, on that sermon, those white Boers, farmers, they were killed, 74 of them, 76, by the Zulus. That was the most treacherous deed that could happen. And then afterwards, there was the Battle of Blood River, and the Dingaan was destroyed, and so on. And so there was never ever a piece of land stolen from the black people. In the rest of the country, there were no black tribes because they had wars within themselves. So they destroyed themselves. So the voortrekkers, the white farmers, they went in open land, but not in Natal, where they went to the Zulus on Dingaan, and he was a traitor. And then after that, everything was sorted out. So there were the two Boer republics, the Afrikaner republics, the Suid-Afrikaanse Republiek and the Republic of the Orange Free State. And they were internationally acknowledged as independent states. Even with Britain, who was at that point of time one of the most colonial, one of the biggest colonial countries. There were two treaties, the Sandrivier Treaty and the Bloemfontein Treaty. And in those two treaties, the Suid-Afrikaanse Republiek, that was the old Transvaal province, and the Republic of the Orange Free State, that's now the current Free State, were acknowledged as independent countries. They had their own presidents and so on. Then the Anglo-Boer War came from 1899 to 1902, and that war was a direct result of the finding of gold in Johannesburg and diamonds in Kimberley. So the British Empire wanted to get their hands on the richness of Johannesburg and Kimberley, and then that started the Boer War of that time. After that, we had the Union of South Africa, which was, I think, not a very good idea. I think it was. I think it would have been better if they had then colonies from that time, the South Afrikaanse Republiek, Orange Free State, Natal, Cape Colony, to make it a federation. But they made it a union, and I think that was part of the beginning of the problems. So the problems that we have now are not just easy a white-black problem that we have. There was a rich history that led to the problem that we have at the moment.
And we spoke to a general the other day, General Bormann, and he said that since the death of Nelson Mandela in 2013, the attacks has gone more up in numbers. Is that your experience too?
The farm murders started 2 months after Mr. F.W. de Klerk, who was then the president of the country, decided to unban the ANC and the South African Communist Party and to let free all the political prisoners. He had that speech of him on the 2nd of February 1990. The first farm murder took place in April 1990.
1990.
1990, yeah. There were some farm attacks. that were very individual cases. But from 1990, you could see a pattern. April, there was 2 farm attacks. May, there was 3 farm attacks. And from there, it just escalated to where we now are. And I think people want to give Mr. Nelson Mandela some credit that he does not deserve.
What makes you think that this whole thing started with the farm attacks? What introduced it?
I think it was an intimidation tactics.
To scare off the whites?
Yeah. In South Africa, if you look to the previous political dispensation, the rural constituencies, which, for example, Waterberg, we are now in Wombos, Bella, was part of the Waterberg constituency, was the high point of resistance against the National Party government and its handing over. Some little bit north, we had the Potgietersrus constituency, we had Soutpansberg constituency. The rural constituencies were always part of the resistance against the handing over to a communist, socialist, black government. I think that is why, and you can go everywhere in the world. One of my friends is the president of the World Agricultural Organization. Perhaps you have heard about him. He is Dr. Theo de Jager. And he can tell you about his experiences all over the world.
All over the world?
All over the world.
Is this happening to white farmers all over the world?
No, let me just finish. He can tell you that all over the world, the farming community is the most conservative community. And in South Africa, it's no acceptance. In South Africa, it's the same. And while the academics in the cities and the political guys, they are very eager to hand over to the ANC, your local communities, as we call it on the platteland, the small towns, they say no, it's not going to happen. And this was always in the old South Africa. Those constituencies were the conservative constituencies where the people said no, we're not going to go this way. And that is why I think the attacks on the farmers started, because it was a way of intimidating them and said, you may perhaps be the more conservative people, but we will show you that we will call the shots. And I think that's why it started on the farming communities.
And you have been actually to the UN and United Nations and talked about these type of problems that the South African farmers are facing today within their daily life. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The United Nations have some interesting procedures and committees that they have. We have been 4 times to the United Nations Forum on Minority Issues. That's a forum that gathers every year during November in Geneva. And we have been there, and we give them feedback on the topics that they want to have on minority issues in that year.
So you would say that the United Nations is fully aware of what is going on within South Africa?
I have been myself in the European Parliament 2 times.
And talking about these issues?
Sure, because they invited me to talk about this. And they know about it. The United Nations know about it. But the problem is that, and that's my personal view, I think the European Parliament, there are in the first place, and I cannot blame them for that. They are looking to their own benefits, to their own countries. South Africa is not part of the European Parliament. The invitation that I got was of some of the parties that have their own caucus that is not necessarily part of the mainstream thinking of the European Parliament. The same goes in Geneva. I think the United Nations, they try to present themselves as a very strong institution, but when you need them, it is very clear that they are a dog without teeth.
So what you're saying,
they can bark, but they cannot bite.
So what you're saying is that United Nations, they are aware of the problem with the South African farmers are being killed and tortured, but you don't think they do enough in order to protect your farmers?
Sure. They know about it. I think the Afrikaans word for farm attacks or farm murders is plaasmoorde. And wherever I got in large parts of the world, the word plaasmoorde, the people know precisely what it is. But yeah, governments look to their own issues first. And I think, as I said, the United Nations is a dog without teeth.
Have they done anything to?
No, they have not done anything. It's a very complicated issue. You know, what must they do? Must they send a peacekeeping force to prevent farm murders? Our own police force in South Africa cannot restore law and order. And I think the United Nations are also not in a position to do that. So that's not going to happen. I think they do nothing because of their knowledge that they cannot do anything. What must they do? What I actually asked in several of those occasions and said, you know, when Mr. Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe started to expropriate the land of the farmers, and especially the European Union implied sanctions against him. We had Mr. Zuma, after that Mr. Ramaphosa, there's no real difference. But then we had Mr. Zuma, who threatened to expropriate our farming land without compensation. But the world keeps silent about that. Why not do the same with Mr. Mugabe? I don't want to have sanctions on the whole country because the population and the poor of the poorest of the population will have to suffer that. But I think focused sanctions can work. For example, Mr. Zuma has a lot of money in Swiss bank accounts. He has lots of money in other places. Put a sanction on him and his cabinet to go anywhere in the world. He cannot go anywhere. And freeze his assets that he has outside of South Africa. And then you can demand for some actions to take place for him to get his assets back. And I think the international community, including the European Union as well as United Nations, can do that if they want to. But I think there's a lack of political will for that. The reason for that, I cannot answer you that question.
But this is very strange because the United Nations is an organization in which you usually associate with helping people and taking care of people who are in trouble. But in this case, they don't seem to want to do anything.
Yeah, I think the problem is, and that's a historical problem, due to our previous apartheid system that we had, and the system of apartheid was separate development to get different people to get the knowledge to reign over themselves. I think that system was discredited, and I think it was not right to discredit it. There was a political agenda against it. Afrikaner people in South Africa are now a minority, but propaganda is sent out that the Afrikaners were the people who inherited apartheid. So the Afrikaner people are the bad guys. So, and I think that's the reason. The whole world's minorities get attention, but the Afrikaner people in South Africa don't get attention because they are linked to, as they call it, apartheid, and apartheid was declared offense against the humanity of the nation, and I totally disagree about it. I think it was the best that we could have to develop people in their own cultural atmosphere and give them their own country.
Like independence.
Correct. And we wanted that for the Afrikaners ourselves. Dr. Verwoerd, who is now unrightfully described as the architect of apartheid, but he said, we as Afrikaner people would love to have a smaller part of the country, but a part that we can call our homeland, so that all the other people, the Zulus, the Xhosas, the Vendas, the Tswanas, they can have their country, which they can call their country. And then in this atmosphere, we can have a confederal state working together on economic issues, but where you have the independence to reign over yourself, your culture, your policing. You know, even if in maintaining law and order, we as Afrikaner people with European background have another view on law and order than the Zulu people. And there's no problem with that. Just manage that and give them the opportunity to maintain their law and order in their way.
But now you're talking about law and order, and it was a couple of months ago, if I'm not mistaken, there were a farm attack in which one man was murdered.
Senegal in the Free State, yes, correct.
And this sparked an uproar among the white people of South Africa. Can you tell a little bit about that? Yeah. That is not exactly law and order, the uproaring part, right?
Well, South Africa is now a culture that we have the right to protest whenever we want against anything we want. We see on a daily basis in South Africa protests mainly against local governments, the municipalities, who don't deliver goods anymore. Some places there is no water, there is no electricity, there is no rubbish removal. Everything just come to a standstill. But the officials and the political people on top, they give themselves big salaries. So the people on the ground, they are getting frustrated with that. So,
from all of this corruption?
Yeah. It's corruption, no service delivery, and on a daily basis. Really on a daily basis, someplace in the country, there are those protests, and those protests usually get it's not peaceful anymore.
It's not peaceful protests anymore.
No. They have a problem with the municipality about service delivery. And when I, as a farmer, drive with my truck past that protest, I'm going to the market to give the people food. That's in my truck. They burn my truck.
They burn your truck?
Yeah. So what do I have to do with a protest on service delivery? If you want to burn down the municipal offices or the house of the mayor who does not do his job, that's another story. And I don't say that's the right thing. But me as a farmer or as a person who delivers bread to the rural community and he goes into that protest, they just turn over the truck and burn it. So that is the violent part of protest that we see. With the farm attacks at Senekal, at the young guy's murder there, we see that the farming community are going there. They have a peaceful protest until the police, the state-owned police, they go with one of their trucks. They drive into the protesters
And harm them?
Yeah, yeah,
They hit them with a car?
yeah. So then they get upset and they turn the police van upside down, and then it started to burn because the petrol, the fuel gets on the hot parts and so on. But that police vehicle was not ignited by the people. But the people were angry, and that was perhaps the worst scenario of anger from the white or the farming community.
In the history of South Africa?
Yeah. We had in Spruit, it's 100 kilometers from here to the north, in the Lumpopo province. There was a protest against farm murders because we had some murders in this province as well. Some elderly people that were murdered. And in Spruit there was a protest. I think there were more or less 4,000 people, farmers, with their tractors, with their trucks, with their bakkies, with everything, coming in from two sides of that little town, and they circulated in that town for hours. Not a single incident. Because the farming community want to make themselves very clear that they are not okay with this. But the farming community, we are disciplined people. We do not burn tires and trucks and that sort of thing. Now Spruit was, I think, one of the best and the biggest protests that there was with no incident. And then we see in Brakkenfell in the Cape province where there was some sort of a party, a private party at the school, where only white pupils were invited. And if I host a party, I have the right to invite whom I want. So that was exactly what happened there. And then the economic freedom fighters of Mr. Julius Malema heard about it, and they said that's racism, and they are actually closing down the school at Brakkenfell. You can just have a look at the media reporting of what happened at Brakkenfell. They cannot just make a statement there. They must damage something. They must burn something.
So what you're saying is basically that the economic freedom fighters and the group that is more prone to be left in the on the political scale, they are allowed to sing "Kill the Boer."
Yeah.
But if the whites are arranging a party where they only invite white people, they get attacked.
Yeah, sure. There's we had our Human Rights Commission in the country has been asked to do some investigations in what we call, from both sides of the spectrum, racial hate speech and so on. And at the end of time, their verdict was that black people cannot be racist because they are black.
They can't be racist because they are black.
Correct. And that was the verdict of the Human Rights Commission in South Africa. So where does that leave us as the white community in South Africa? We have nobody and no institution who protects our rights. We have been told that we have the best constitution in the world. There's a clause in that should protect minority rights. Section 235 of our constitution. But Section 235 stipulates that minority rights can be protected if there would be a law that gives that protection. So I was part of some people that we call the Boer Afrikaner Volksraad. And we went to see Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa. He was then the acting president. Mr. Zuma was somewhere in the country, somewhere in the world. And we asked Mr. Ramaphosa that Section 235 of the Constitution must come in place now.
And what did you get in reply?
So that the rights of minorities can be acknowledged, and that from there on we can address the needs of the minorities, even if it is only cultural or it is territorial or whatever. And then Mr. Ramaphosa told us he cannot do anything because the Luthuli House, that's the headquarters of the ANC in Johannesburg, their Secretary General gives orders to all of them. He was the acting president as well. So we went home, we did not get anything. Section 235 is still part of the Constitution of South Africa, but the ruling party does not want to, is not totally not eager to put that clause into practical law to give minorities the rights to self-determination. And Mr. Ramaphosa just laughed us out. Not going to happen.
So if we're about to round up here, and it's been very interesting to hear what you have to say and the situation for the farmers. Are you hopeful that the situation for the farmers in South Africa will change?
I think the farming community in South Africa is the most positive community you can have, I think, anywhere in the world.
You are very united?
Yeah, united and not. But when it comes to problem, yes, we are united. But you know, we have big farms. And I think this is an historical perspective. When the voortrekkers come from the Cape and the different groups went different ways, then they plotted their farms. And it was a farm 2 days per horse that way and 2 days per horse that way. And then I was president of my own farm. Afterwards, republics were formed and so on. So the Afrikaner people are very individual, especially the farmers. You must understand that, because we have big farms, and on my place, I'm the boss. On my farm, I'm the boss. And I think the new dispensation made a little change to that. But on the other hand, we are a country with very difficult climate to farm in. Several parts of the country, like the Karoo, the Northern Cape, they have had a drought now for 7 years.
7 years in a row.
My wife has a nephew, and his little boy is 6 years old. And last year he saw for the first time in his life rain. And he went with his camera from window to window in the house because he wanted to see what is this. He did not understand it. That is some of the realities that we have here. We sit here in an area and it's lovely green, but we call it the green drought. It rains sometimes, then we have some nice rain, and then we have, like today, temperatures between 38 and 40 degrees, and it burns everything dead. So it looks nice, but for a farming community, it's very difficult. We get our water out of the ground. We have boreholes, pots, and the water there is deteriorating because all the people around need water. And because there is not enough rain, the underground water also starts to get lower and lower. Some of the boreholes, the pumps we have, they are dry. There's no water anymore. We cannot irrigate everything. Many of the big farmers, they plant maize 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 hectares. You cannot irrigate that. It's too big. So you are reliable on nature, what nature gives you. And every time a farmer puts the seed in the ground, in the soil, he is optimistic. Because if he is not optimistic, why would he put a seed in the ground, knowing nothing is to come from that? And I think that farming reality is also in the blood and in the cycle of the farmers. We don't like what we see. We don't like what we get. We don't like the curveballs that are thrown to us. We don't like it that they call us thieves of the land. We don't like it that they said there will be expropriation without compensation. But in spite of that, we put that mealie seed or that corn seed in the land, hoping to get something out of that. And that makes a farmer in South Africa a very optimistic and positive person. We have had the government of Georgia, next to Russia. Some years ago, they came to us and said, our intelligence says that in the next few years, 2,000 of your farmers have to leave the country. We want to have them because your farmers in South Africa are the best farmers in the world because of the natural problems that we have, because of the political attacks that we have. And still our farmers are doing good.
You are hard-working people.
Yeah. And during the lockdown period, the agricultural sector in the country was the only one that gave an economic growth to the economy. Mining did not, small business did not, agriculture did, and it's because of the positive thinking of the farmers. We as an agricultural union have every year a competition for the young farmers, the best young farmers. And then you go from farm to farm for the young farmers who enter the competition. And you ask them, boy, why are you farming in South Africa? You hear about all these problems. Then they say, and that's Afrikaans saying for an elderly people, oom, uncle, oom, because we like to farm. And all those problems, we will face them when they come to us. For now, we want to farm. And with that positive idea that the young farmers have, I see there's a great opportunity for the future. All of us thought that the Soviet Union is so solid. Nothing can beat communism and the Soviet Union. Nothing can get the Berlin Wall down. And the Berlin Wall does not exist. The Soviet Union does not exist. I think in some times in South Africa, the ANC also will not exist. But our farmers will go on positively giving food also for those guys who don't like us, because they need our food as well. And that's why I think we have a future in this country. My ancestors, my wife's ancestors come from Holland, from the Netherlands. And I think it would be not too difficult to go there. I don't want to. This is my country. I'm born here, and I take the struggle with all the rest of my people, not going anywhere.
Anyway, even though you will be attacked?
Then we take that battle on that time. I'm with it with the young farmers. We are going on now, and when the problem comes, we'll face it. I'll face my problem also at that time. But I'm still positive.